It's contestable. It seems that Brits are on the sick like never before, and they're set to cost the economy nearly £16 billion this year alone. Since the pandemic, people are less keen, it seems, to go to work. Are they really that sick? We'll have more details in a few moments' time. In other news...
Getting his teeth into the study of a dummy mouthful is one of the dental students at Guy's Hospital, London. It's the largest school of dentistry in Britain, and some 70 students graduate from it each year.
It started out with such Nasher-based hope, didn't it? But finding a dentist is getting worse. Many Brits are resorting to literally pulling out their own teeth. Are you one of those who've tried and failed to find an NHS person to do it for you? And have you resorted to a swift session of DIY dentistry? We'll look at that in just a little bit as well. The suspicion that Sadiq Khan is planning a paper mile driving scheme has taken a new turn. This is after the roads minister has said he had a word from the mayor's office that there are plans to potentially see this thing through. We'll look at that later as well. And our tech journalist Will Guyot is back with us.
So I'm going to show you how to get any iPhone unlocked. This method will work for any generation. So if you have an iPhone 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, it doesn't really matter. It is exactly the same procedure.
Wow. So how easy is it to unlock a phone if you've forgotten your passcode? Boris Johnson says he's got no idea how to access his mobile after the COVID inquiry asked to look at his WhatsApp messages. We'll have a look at that and more with Will Guyot a little later in the programme. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news, right here on talkTV, 0344 499 1000. When I was a kid, this is absolutely true, I have no recollection at all. I'm not making this up, and I think whether this is a generational thing, whether this is about growing up in a kind of working class background where people did manual work or where your old man or your mum were self-employed, but quite seriously, growing up, I have no recollection of my dad ever taking a day off work. I can't ever recall him taking a day off work. He was off for my nan's funeral, and I remember it was a standout day that my dad was at home when I got home from school. It was an extraordinary moment. What's he doing here? Why is he here? Why has he got a black tie on, much like this one I'm wearing now? Might even be the same tie. I never remember the man having a day off work. I mean, he must have had a cold or a cough or felt a little under the weather at some point. I don't think he ever... There was a certain kind of mentality, I suppose, and I think it was probably his background. It was the fact that he was a self-employed painter and decorator, and if he took time off, he didn't get paid. It was as simple as that, and he hardly earned great money anyway, so being off meant you didn't get to pay the bills. So that probably factored into it as well. But I think there was also a sense of, I suppose, a curious sense of duty in many respects. It's what you did, you know, it's how you function, it's how you look after your family, it's how you find a bit of purpose in your life, a little bit of direction. It's your day, it's your template, it's your roadmap, if you like. It's all of those things, I suppose. And we hear today that there's a surge of workers going off sick, which this year alone could cost the government £15.7 billion. £15.7 billion. I was looking at that announcement yesterday about paying the union members more money, and I think that's going to cost about £2 billion. So here's another figure for you, £15.7 billion, according to a report from the Office of Budget Responsibility. It revealed the rising tide of ill health since the pandemic is worsening the already parlous outlook for the UK's finances. We know that there are 2.5 million signed off sick at the moment. This goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway for the harder hearing, because there'll always be somebody who picks me up later on as if I didn't say this. But there will be people who are legitimately sick. OK, whether it's a physical issue, whether it's a mental health, whatever it happens to be. But that isn't most people. There's not 2.5 million people in that position. The idea this is costing us 15.7 billion quid on an annual basis is crazy. More and more people are going on the sick. And I want to know what's behind that. I want to know what your theory is as to why you think your fellow Brits can't be bothered to go to flipping work. I mean, it was never an optional extra once upon a time. In fact, you left school, it was something to sort of look forward to because your own autonomy had arrived. Have we got lazy? Is that what it is? Did the pandemic come down with the lazy fairy that injected everybody with a dose of lethargy so that you can sit there on the sofa rather than actually bothering to go to work? Pay the bills, I'll find some other way to pay. There's bound to be a way to pay the bills. I can work that out. I'll just do 4 days instead of 5. Yeah, but you're not allowed to do that in your job. I'll just go sick then. How are you going to go sick? Well, stress. Stress sounds a bit like mental health problems, doesn't it? Stress. Nobody can disprove that. I've got stress. OK, well, we better let you have the day off then. Is that what's happening here? 0344 499 1000. Let me ask you this question. How do we get Britain back to work? How do we get Britain back to work? If we are seriously able to wheel out numbers to the tune of £16 billion and 2.5 rising to 3 million people on the sick, we have a problem. In fact, we have an enormous problem. Potentially an irredeemable, and we're scratching our heads going, what's wrong with the economy? What's wrong with the economy is half your fellow workmates are in bed. That's what's wrong with the economy. How do we get Britain back to work? 0344 499 1000. Let's discuss this and more with Natasha Clark, Chief Political Correspondent over there at The Sun. Natasha, afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Glad to know you're putting in a shift today as well and not homesick.
I'm working from home. Does that count?
No, you're allowed that. You're allowed that.
Am I allowed? I am at work.
You're a hard-working hack. As long as you can be creative, doesn't matter where you are, does it really?
Yes.
So listen, I mean, there is a problem here, right? I mean, this is a genuine problem for the government. We read these figures, we sort of gloss over them, but actually when you drill down on it and try and equate what it means to the Treasury and the Exchequer and the like, I mean, this is a serious territory.
It is, and I think that you've got to the crux of the problem here. Obviously, you know, there's a lot of moral and ethical issues around what you just mentioned, around people, less people working. But the main problem for the government is the amount of money that's bringing in for the Treasury and for the Exchequer, because we all pay our taxes when we work, and some of that income tax and that national insurance goes towards paying for the things that we all need, like schools, like hospitals, like our local services. And without that money, there's going to be a huge big hole in their budgets. Yeah. Essentially, that is what this OBR report from the fiscal watchdog today is warning. The rise of people going on sick means that there's going to be a huge hole in that. And where are the Treasury going to find that money to pay for it? And the government have known this has been an issue for a while. If you remember, sort of just cast your mind back a couple of months ago to the Back to Work budget, which the Work and Pension Secretary and the Chancellor laid out a number of things that they hope will get more people back to work, basically making benefit claimants do more things to look for jobs. But yes, it does appear to be that there are more people on long-term sick than there were ever before. Some of that is mental health issues, as you mentioned. Some of that is also physical health issues, caused also a lot by working from home. Lots of the issues, they say, are from people with musculoskeletal issues from not sitting at a proper desk all day. So, yes, there's a lot of issues, a lot to unpack here. But, yes, the issue for Jeremy Hunt and the government is how on earth do they get more people back into the workplace to pay for all the things that we need every day?
And it's interesting you mentioned that about because I always thought when the whole pandemic thing happened and people started working from home, you and I work in the same building, so we are aware of the rules and regulate. Desks have to be a certain width apart. The chair I'm sitting on here, which is probably not dissimilar to the one you sit in on the days you do come into work, there's probably about £3,000 worth of chair I'm sitting on right now because it's good for my back and my posture and all that business. Of course, if you're at home, you don't have any of that. You can lay on the sofa with your laptop between your toes eating toast. I mean, that's not going to be good for your system.
It's not good. And yeah, work from home has led to an increase, not just in long COVID, which obviously a lot of people got COVID during the pandemic, and we don't yet know the sort of effects of what could happen if you get sort of struck down by the virus and you find it really hard to recover. And we know that loads of people have been suffering from that as well. But yes, also the rise of people just not getting up and about, working at desks that are not appropriate to be worked at. We know how many young people especially were cramped over kitchen tables during lockdown and working from their bedrooms because they just had nowhere else to work and they weren't used to doing it. And those long-term issues are now starting to be felt. And obviously there's also a number of people who probably decided to retire early in the pandemic and who haven't got back into the workplace. All of these things are adding up. Yeah. All of these little issues are adding up to create a really big headache for the government.
There's a thing apparently called pyjama back, where you keep your pyjamas on for so long, they eventually just mould into the skin of your back. So
I haven't suffered from that one.
You just become a set of walking pyjamas, apparently. That's another ailment they haven't really got to the bottom of. But I suppose also there must be within that list, I would assume, Natasha, some people who just got used to the idea that it kind of almost recalibrated their idea of what they want to do in terms of work and where their emphasis of life was. You know, this work-life balance thing all sounds very worthy. I want a greater work-life balance. A mate of mine who runs a pub, one of his 17-year-old waiters said that to him quite recently. I need a better work-life balance. He said, you're still at school, mate. What are you talking about? But this is, our expectations have kind of changed in that respect, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. And I think some of the younger generations as well are very much feeling this more so than the older generations, you know, because they haven't sort of had this much time in the workplace, especially people coming from university straight into the jobs. You know, they're spending less time. They want to spend more time working from home. They want to have that more flexible sort of working hours and working patterns. And yes, the workplace just is changing very, very slowly. And all of these things from the pandemic, I think, are really having an effect. And, you know, older generations are saying, well, actually, we didn't have it like that when we were young. Should it be like that? And there is this really big debate of should the workplace change or should young people sort of fit in with the workplace that it's always existed?